Woke up and had a kind of rough couple days since they were depleting my intestines, and stressing out pretty bad. I just got used to waking up in the morning, and some things I want to talk about is my it's very haunting of my sister that passed away, and I know that I think I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna have to go to a church service maybe today, or probably I don't know, sometime soon before I leave. And one of the reasons is because like I was dreaming of I don't know if I was dreaming or I was just sort of hazing in my sleep, and I was thinking of when I went to CCD and all the persecution that was going on. And I don't know anything about my sister that passed away. And I remember I was thinking when I was at boot camp, and this was like right within the few months or weeks within 9/11. And I was at boot camp, and I remember Robert, the sergeant, and then Michelle, who was like another sergeant there. And all the sergeants were black. I mean, not everyone was. There was maybe one. There was later down the road. There was like one Mexican guy and then one white lady. And I don't even know if that was a transgender or not. But I remember they were sizing me up in every inch and corner about my dead sister and Michael Jackson, because they were sizing me up and doing all this other shit. And I remember them bringing a cart to my left, and I was at the front row. And this is a church, okay? This is like a boot camp church, but it's not a church service anymore. But it's an abandoned church that they use as a boot camp. And I remember, I was at the front line, and Robert comes over to me, and he kind of looks like Robert Carrera, and comes over to me, and he looks a little bit like Frankie, and I remember they were approaching me, and he goes to my left, and then he squats and goes, sorry about that. He goes, and they were running all these routines, and there's cameras inside this church. You have to have them because there's all these delinquent kids, right? These are all kids from the hood. Many of them got sent to prison, many of them. And some of them ended up not showing up on weekends because they got life sentences, or they went to prison, or they were killed. And it wasn't very often that somebody would end up passing away through some sort of gun violence or something. But it happened, and they would talk about it sometimes, and just say, "Oh, you hear about that other guy? He got shot and killed in a drug deal." But anyway, I remember them bringing a cart because you have to be there from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So 12 hours. It's just drills and disciplining teenagers to better their lives, or help to better their lives from going down the wrong path. And they bring this cart, and Michelle brings this cart to my far left, and I'm at this front of this church service deal thing, and they put something like you gotta resemble that this is like a little girl, right? Because I don't know, they know about this deceased little girl. I mean, there's running a whole investigation situation. At least I think they are. And I look to my left, and she goes over and she says, and grabs some papers and some pens and leaves, because you got to keep in mind there was so much war over after my dad's money, because my mom's has their abducted kids. This is around the time that Julian reunites with his twin. I have no idea. I'm 16 years old, and 15 to 16 years old. And I remember one of the ladies, Michelle, who was married to Robert, goes over to the cart and looks at me, like gives this real piercing, angry looking eyes, like a submissive look, like comes over and goes, and then walks away. So there's a symbolism knowing that this little girl's next door. Is Hector trying to take advantage of her? What's happening with my mother? Because at this time and my age, there is some conflict with my mother, and I noticed that whenever I was around my mother, she was very obedient. She was like not obedient to me, but like I say, hey mom, let's do this or just do that. Okay. And so I noticed this is one of the first things when I was about 15 years old was I could tell that she was really super paranoid. Like not paranoid, but like, okay, I gotta do this, I gotta do this. And I don't know what was going on in her life at this time. I don't know. So I think I believe now when I look on it, is because she did something wrong. She has no education. You got to keep in mind that she doesn't know how to read. She's an immigrant. She's with an old man. He has a lot of money. They don't know the stories. They just know partial of the stories. But there's a dead little girl that had just died within 2 years. And this is some of the symbolism that they're doing that stay away from the little girl. Or Hector is trying to, and you got to keep in mind, in my mind, there's no existence of a sister. What bothers me so much in these circumstances is when my sister passed away, I'm walking into not only did it shell shock me, sort of, thinking that this could possibly be true, but my mother's telling me something else different. When I go to Frankie, you got to understand, he's very passive with everything, with this circumstances, that he needs to kind of retain the information and figure, because he's the older brother. And I think Frankie had already gone to the Navy. Yeah, I think Frankie had already gone to the service. And, it haunts me. It's a haunting story. It's extremely haunting. Like, obviously this is a church. The church is going to take over her soul, her dead body. They crucify her, and it's the exchange. Same thing we seen Robert Carrera was doing. Yeah, there's nothing there, and he does this with his hands. And the reason he says this, oh no, it's because it's Jesus. She's with Jesus now. You see, there's nothing there. She's with Jesus. We won the fight. So it's always about ownership, credibility, and I'm just haunted by it. I'm fucking haunted by it because I'm in the car with my mother. And my mother, when I was like 15 years old, when we'd get into arguments, she said, "Be quiet, Hector. There's cameras. There's some recording devices, cameras listening to you." And I would get into arguments. Well, I don't care. What are you doing, Mom? What about Dad? I don't understand what my mother understands about my dad, and I don't understand the circumstances about the twin. I just know that I feel that my mother's not making good decisions and getting rid of my dad, which he did it to himself. But I remember my mother always, she was paying attention very clearly, as best as she could, but it was a sense like someone was getting onto her because she may have done something bad, but she knew that she needed help, like with the family, like somebody's going to help something, right? Instead of not doing anything, which was even worse. I'm very haunted by it, especially when I'm consistently being trained about where her soul, and especially now because anytime I think of her, she's the devil. Miranda is the devil. Remember when I went to anesthesia and they put a devil's little girl tattoo, satanic symbol, or like a devil little girl with black hair? When I went to anesthesia 2 weeks ago or a week ago. So that's the way to isolate any well-being of saying, okay, well, she's with you, and that's good, right? We believe that people are with Jesus, right, or with God. But it's the way to be able to excuse and take everything. It doesn't change that this is my biological twin. This is my biological sister. My mom's twin. I don't know. I have no idea when my mother's triplet showed up into the picture, other than when I had to have been around 17 to 18 years old, because I was living by myself. I was living by myself when I was 16 years old in a 3-bedroom house, having parties and people come over, and I was using drugs here and there. You know, I was a very different drug user. I never spent my own money for drugs. Something I never did. It rarely ever when it was when it came to hard drugs. A lot of the times when I did spend drugs money, it wasn't too all that often, but most of the time it was usually because it was I had a house for people to use drugs, and then it would run circles on me. And the same thing they did to Michael. Everyone would go buy drugs with him, and then Bruce would do drugs with him, and then Chris Martinez used to do drugs with him, and then, you know, or take ecstasy and acid, but there would be different people show up, oh, let's have a party, oh, and then somebody else, let's have a party, and then they would do the same thing they did to me when I was in my late teens. And that's really toxic, because you're basically being a punching bag. So I know what that life is like. And but I wasn't the druggy user that you particular. Have you ever heard of people that did drugs that were like professional psychologists or like therapists? They had associate's degrees and bachelors, and they were educated, and they would do it for. But it wasn't like a drug user. I never robbed anybody. It was just a experiment in the world that I lived in, and just get cooped up in this whole rave music bullshit that, you know, you're doing drugs, and it somehow kind of gives you this idea of Jimi Hendrix. You do drugs and you can kind of go into these depths of music further than maybe some other people, and enjoy life a little bit more than others. And that was the total opposite. We shouldn't have been doing drugs. But I'm just so haunted by this. You know, because what they do with this practice, by doing that when I'm about to get placed under anesthesia, is to make sure that the practices of the imprints of those exercises is to be placed on me, to make sure that when I finally exit out of this world, when I die, however that is, through intentional, accidental, it will never be actually natural causes, in my opinion. But it's to say that, oh, I'm trying to seek for the light of my sister that's going to save me and take me to the afterlife of paradise. She's thinking of her is thinking of the devil. Remember, she's with Jesus. She's not there anymore. She's with God now. Because Robert Carrera used to say this about my dad. He says, oh no, your dad's gone now. Your dad's gone. And so I don't know the circumstances about what's attached to it. Maybe they have nothing to do with it. You know, and I say this because, you know, whoever the psychologists are who's getting this information could probably use better of this, but God, they're scumming the shit out of my fucking existence of sister. There's no retaining of what other people have with their families when a child dies or someone close to them dies. We think of the afterlife, we think of the light, we think of God. We don't think now Miranda is a little demon devil, that if she ever shows up or does anything, that's who she was, because we remember Jesus Christ. And practicing that when I go on anesthesia was a symbolism of you also going to go into a possible death scenario. And it's to close the doors on that. I'm just so disturbed by this. I don't think they shouldn't have done that. And that is what I call is what this evil is. You know, they're doing this on, there's no fucking reason. I'm going to fucking just do this because I did not go to get this colonoscopy to practice any type of death situation. There's nothing in my mind. I just want to get this completed, checked out as a medical procedure, and then leave. That's what the fucking I don't look forward to having anything placed in my butt. But this is what has to get done, so, you know, check for my health. But they're using it for their advantage. How much an advantage and benefits could I get from it if that wasn't placed and I could think in a pleasant environment? Even though, and I think, because, you know, if my sister exists, she's protecting me now or doing something. Oh, okay, so now I put the transgender that protected me, and that's really, and it's so fucked up because my mom can no longer remember or probably even talk about it anymore, and now it becomes someone else's profitable gain, which is President Barack Obama's and his wife. But I wanted to make sure how these people take ownership of my dead sister, and I'm 16 years old, and I don't have any idea that my sister is deceased. And so they're asking me questions. How many brothers you have? One's in the Navy, and so when I'm answering questions, they figure out, oh, do you have a sister? You don't have a sister? Oh, but she's older. She is not really a part of our life. I've only seen her a few times. So if Hector's using drugs, he's in a delinquent center, and they hear me argue with my mother, he's a bad juvenile. Yeah, I got him this time. And I wasn't. These people have no fucking idea. And this is why I talk about the sergeants in the military were not on my side. They were there to help. I do believe that to some extent. But this was a profitable gain for Michael Jackson. Because this guy over here, Miguel and Diana, are still living over there. And anyway, moving forward of the circumstances, it's very haunting to me because they were practicing my sister's death. Michelle was, when she was approaching the cart. And I remember very, very vividly when she gave me this look, and she didn't have a reason to be mad at me because she was sort of a nice lady, but she had a really high-pitched voice, and she had hazel eyes. I don't know if she was a transgender. I don't think she was a transgender, but had hazel eyes, and I think they were natural. I don't think they were contacts, but I remember her looking over at me and looking at me like angry, mad, and then walking away. And because she was never in the auditorium. I have to go into elaboration because how the setting was. There's only nothing but kids and one sergeant. And there's probably like 40 of us, 50 of us in a room. And it's in a big open space church-looking chapel. Like it's huge. It's very big, very spacey. And there's cameras in there. So if there are cameras, you will be able to look at the cameras, read the body language, what people are saying, and everything that's going on. Because I do remember at the corner of the church, there was lately their camera, and they had another camera in a different location. I'm pretty sure there may be a camera somewhere else that were hidden, but those were the cameras that were there. They had to have them because there was just a bunch of, delinquent kids. And so I thought it was important. I'm so haunted by the idea of my mother not being able to be mentally functional. I'm just haunted by it, and my sister being just, my mother got raped by this guy. I mean, I saw this guy physically, and in order for this guy, which I could have been Ivan's dad, I don't know if he was. I think he was because he looked related to him. How they sold my mother for sex, because this guy showed up. He lived at that house for like 5 or 6 months, and he was constantly always seemed to be stalking my mother, waiting to get a fucking in, waiting to mate. My mother always said, I don't like that guy, and he was doing this all the fucking time. This is one of the reasons she gets deterred from there, and she sees that little girl there, and it's very. I mean, my mother not only gets deterred by that guy, but by this transgender. And I remember him sort of looking at me, and he knew that I knew what he was after. He was after my mother. But at that time, was that after my dad's suicide? Yeah, it was before my dad's suicide. But my dad was still pretty clunky, never paid attention to this person ever, because my dad was drinking and shit, and just kind of just there. So it's just very very tormenting, like, because it all continues to stack up against me, and it's just so that they can secure their situation with this situation, because they don't want me to believe in. I only believe in the God and worship the God and religion that they tell me to. If I don't, I suffer the consequences in horror and in fear by the statements and procedures that they're doing to me. When you have the whole world coming against you, you have no money, people are attacking you, and all this other shit that's going on, there's no hope. There's no hope at all. There's not any hope. But I went to my mother's yesterday, and she opened the door, and I gave her some paperwork of the HIV test as I'm non-reactive, but I still think they're lying to me. I don't know, but it says I don't have any sexually transmitted diseases. And when I'm talking to my mother, show the paperwork, about to leave, there's a box or something that falls. There's something that falls in her apartment, which is probably the electronic device. Something that falls. I don't know what it was. Some commotion, symbolizing, the afterlife. And my mother just goes, "Oh, no, it's not. Oh, this is not. And so this is my mother's twin. This is my mom's biological twin sister. So it's my aunt technically, and it's not my mother. So I'm very taunted because when I watch my mother's eyes, she's not all there, and it's just free money. Whatever organization that wants to claim it's the church, whatever anybody wants to come and steal and take, and then run their army platoons with friends that I have, whether that anyone, all of them. I'm my mother's son always. That is always going to be with me. When you start using religion and persecuting me, now you take the spiritual afterlife and you start continue to put it on your fucking table. That's what you're doing. But I know my mother's very well in her spiritual belief to how she understood it, because I was around her so much and how she behaved, and I was guiding her so much of these circumstances, and I was basically the camera of everything that was going on. And when you don't have cameras to prove everything, and I have to do drawings and I have to say all this other shit, unless you have cameras and then identify the drawings and compare them, that's the only way you're going to get the truth. Because how much do you want to believe me over somebody else who's a police officer, detective, or a woman that's very nice and claims to be Mother Teresa? That's bullshit. But I'm just fucking taunted. It's like it's a ghost story, you know. And she was, when I saw my sister, she was throwing up, and she was just like limp dead and wasn't even moving, like she was dead. And I don't know if my mother, because Ivan did this like for like 2 weeks, or I don't know, it was like no more than a month, I think. No more than a month, where she was getting more limp, and it was like, I think it was like 2 or 3 trips that I remember she was, and Ivan can tell you this. Ivan can tell you when she just wasn't, he couldn't pick her up, and like she had no effort. He was picking up like a dead body for real life. Like he was just picking up a dead little girl. Like she was alive, and you know, like just like dead. And you know, at this time, there's no ideas that I'm thinking that this is my sister, because my mother's trying to protect, and she's doing the best that just she's fine over there. She's just fine, but you don't know about these stories. My mother, you know, once she gets raped by this guy, because my mother came and she was like, oh, when you know, like he had anally raped her, but I remember seeing her stimulated, and unless he did try, but my mother fought him off and he didn't, and maybe my mother had a stomach ache. The only way you can find out is if my mother's perfectly fine, and if you don't, guess what? Got away with that one again. And if there's no evidence, got away with it again. But that's what I saw. But how do you believe what I have to say? Because remember, you didn't even ask me years ago. You got away with it again. But the spiritual afterlife is always guaranteed, isn't it? So they're sacrificing my dead sister, my mother's daughter, and my mother has no words over it. And now this is a haunting story that she's the devil. If I ever get an apparition from her, she's the devil. Remember anesthesia when I was going to go into sleep? She's the devil or she's a demon. Anything that shows up and witnesses of her, it's really the devil. She's with God now. Remember the church and Jesus, remember? That's the devil. So there's no gratification that I could ever get in my own life now, including my mother, which they already know she don't believe in shit, my mother's twin, but my mother herself. So guess what? Now what is that? Whose profitable gain that becomes? For President Barack Obama. You see how these it's just not racist. It's just because, they're black. And then Sin Raquel. And you got to understand, Robert Carrera, I know, I believe was pawning me off to someone that was, because Raquel was already dating Richard, and they figured out Richard was gay. And so when they find that out, guess what happens? He comes by me, starts walking, and he just looks at Michelle and goes, yeah, I'll take that. And he's walking in front of me, kind of like a sergeant walks back and forth. Because it's training your mind. There's an opportunity I want you to get with that one. But you don't know about that story either, do you? Do you see how that plays in? No, that's the one you need to get. He's 16 years old, he's a young one, yeah, go infect him. Because everyone knows a racial world. Anytime a woman, especially white women, this ever happens to, when they fuck a black guy, the white guys will never touch him again. And it's very true. We all know this. It was in high school. I talked about it with Jack Murphy. I talked about it with other friends. We, even as kids, we always understood when a white girl fucked a black guy, it was cutting off all ties. She was only going to stay with the blacks. The white guys wouldn't even touch her anymore. And the white Mexicans would have, but that was something that was always understood. That's a concept that we understand, that once you get with that skin color, specifically black, a white person could go, a white woman can fuck some Mexican guy, and a white guy will get with her so much, yeah, it doesn't bother, but it's not the same as, the racial barriers is different, but you got to understand, because my mother's in no defense of this circumstances. Now, this is happening to me when I'm at school. Remember Michael Jackson? He's black. Michael Jackson. Remember the movement. Remember political power. So they knew by this time. By this time, all the sergeants ever knew about Raquel. But I think it's important for me to talk about, because that's now has been installed inside of me. She's with God now. If I ever get an apparition, if I ever try to symbolize her as the white light or a soul that's trying to save me and protect me or take me to paradise, it is only the devil fooling me. Because remember, we understand in biblical times. To my understanding, if I remember correctly, any apparitions that you ever see in life are all devils, are all demons and Satan, because all the souls have been taken to God in heaven with Jesus. So for me to find leverage with something with a different source doesn't work anymore. What we're going to do is we're going to use Jesus. You see how Jesus is an eternal trash can? You can always get away with what you want and then use it for the afterlife and then manipulate it. Because remember Michael Jackson? Remember the money? Oh, you only did it for your heart. No, you only did it because you were loving and kind, and you're just so determined in loving and kind. And that's not the case. So, I'm just so taunted by it, because they were taunting me and pestering me about my dead sister. And you actually had her symbolizing a little gray cart about 30 feet from me. 40 feet from me, to my left, when I was at the front row of this church boot camp, and they were symbolizing her dead body. Because I remember very distinctly, there's no tables in this room, in this big chapel. There's no chairs. There's nothing. It's just, you have the church, seats, the long chair, the long cotton padded normal church seats they have. You know, they're real long. They don't have aisles. They're not separated. They're just big long chairs. But they don't have single chairs there anywhere. There's no table. So when you walk in there was no reason for them to have a table there. So I know 100% that they were trying to symbolize it because they thought I knew. And I didn't. And I remember my mother being very nervous and knowing that not only she has to be full-blown obedient, but she has to also turn the tables on me to save her own life. And then the other younger kids, because I'm already 16 years old. My mother understands. At 14 years old, at 15 years old, when my mother left Mexico, my mother told me she ran away from Mexico when she was 15 years old. That's what she said. She told me she was like 14 or 15 years old. She didn't get to the United States until she was like 17 or 18. But my mother would lie about her age because of my dad, you know, really old and marriage and whatnot. Because my mother, she would only lie about this specific part. And not lie in a way, it wasn't a lie of betrayal. It was like just to protect me and just to not make her look like a cunt and just a worthless trash. Because my mother would always tell me her fate relied on one quarter. My mother told me this story a million times, and I'd always listen to her because she'd get so emotional. She said her fate was on one call and one quarter. Her entire fate was, and because she had gotten robbed, she saved all her money up, and she said she had it in her purse, and she said she was at a bus station, or she was at a bus station or on a train or on a bus. And she said that she was real careful, and you know, you're talking 1970s when this happens, early 80s. I was born in 84. Frankie was born in 1975, so this is the 70s. This is the 70s. You know, you're talking Frankie was born in 1979, so my mother was like doing this at 1975, 1977. Like during Woodstock, hippie days, and all this other shit. This is Mexico. This is 1975 Mexico. This is fucking brutal. This is crazy. She says that she looks, and she was secure, and then she looked away for a moment, and she said, Hector, miro, and she checks her purse, and someone had took the money out of her purse. I don't know how, because I heard they're really good thieves out there. I've heard of thieves are so good on buses and trains in foreign countries, especially during that time, that you actually have to wear your purse or your cargo in front of your chest, because they'll get near you, and they're professional thieves, and they know how to unzip your backpack and do all kinds of shit. They're real good at that. So my mother would tell me, you know, she said she had one quarter. She found one quarter of her backpack, and her fate relied on that. So my mother understands. If she lied to me and she was really 13 years old when she ran away and she's on a bus, but she said, my mother always threw a couple of extra numbers out there. Like she would tell me, look, I was 15, no, I was like 16. I was like 15 or 16. You know, because girls do that. You ever seen girls underage to try to go into the club? They're 15 years old. I used to do that. Girls do that more frequently. They're like 14 years old, 15 years old, and try to get in a club at 18 years old. Or try to get with a guy that's 25 years old and they're 14 or 15 years old. They think they're adults and want fully developed women and ready. But I think it's important for me to talk about because the fact is that my mother is telling me this story, and I think she was younger. I don't know exactly what. I think my mom was like 13 or 14, in my opinion. I'm telling you the truth. My mother told me she ran away when she was like to the United States when she was 15. But she said for about a year, maybe a little more, she said that she ran away from home. And then she didn't tell me what she did. I don't know what her life was like. And then she got to the U.S. She attempted when she was 15 to get to the U.S. and she successfully ran over the border. And I think it's important for me to talk about because, when my mother is telling me this story, she always said, my fate was relied on one quarter, and I said, how did you know this person? I said, how did you know this person in the U.S.? Oh, she said that she knew a friend of a friend or something that said that there was a job waiting for her. So I don't know, we'll never know that story. If my mother's not mentally ill, you'll never know about that story. But she said that it was like a friend of a friend, that she knew that she could be a nanny, and that was her story. And that's how she was going to get to the U.S. when she got there. And it turns out it wasn't good. She didn't want to talk about it. I don't know if it was like a sex trade or whatever it was, but I talk about this because I think it's important for my mother to understand. If my mother's mentality is, if I'm ready at 14 years old and 13 years old to be on my own, I'm from Mexico. Shit, if Hector's 16 years old, my mother used to always tell me, "Tú eres americano, tú sabes inglés." But you got to understand, my mother has no education, so for me to have an education at a elementary school level is already ready for the world. That's her mindset. So I'm ready to go out in the world. College degrees is nowhere conversation in my mom's mind in our house at all, especially with my mother, at all. High school is the only thing that my father really installed. Even high school, as long as I got a little bit of high school was fine, because my other aunts only got a little bit of high school and they dropped out. Ceci and I think Joni went to Turner, I think possibly, even for a year. I don't even know. So this mentality then plays against me, because my mother is not wanting to do this intentionally. She just knows that when she gets placed under pressure, Hector's fine. He's just, you got enough school, you'll survive. Instead of thinking of any high level of accomplishments, anything like that. So when I'm 16 and my mom's in the car and she knows all these people are now persecuting her, it gives her more the reason to say, oh, okay, we'll just throw him away. Oh, okay, well, he's ready. I don't care. I got to think of the 10-year-old kid now. But do you understand what's actually happening now? Do you understand how the dead little girl, Michael Jackson, now plays on the tables of theirs? That's why. So, this is just it's a haunting situation, because, that's what they did. That's what they did. They installed that she's the little girl's the devil. She's with Jesus now, so that's what you think. Every time I think of her, it's really the devil. She's with God now. She's with Jesus. See, Jesus is the church. Now, Senator Robert Carrera, you see how, not how that works. See how smart the circumstances? I'm not blaming him. I'm saying that there's a lot of other circumstances that are going on as well. But you have to understand what the circumstances, that this is, they're all playing this on. And I'm the one that's doing, me and Frankie doing everything in the suffering. Everything. But it's time for a brand new house. And you felt really good, because see, if I ever make enough money in my world, in my life, and you want to make me a professional DJ, what am I going to buy for my mother that everyone wants to buy for their mother? A brand new car, a brand new house? What did I buy? Oh no, give it to Marco. You see how you introduce something new? It was him that did it. No, it was Julian that did it. No, it was the other twin that did it. Wait, what? You see how manipulative now this becomes? It's always in their favor. And the President of the United States is doing this on purpose. President Barack Obama. Because he gets mentioned in a conversation when I'm at CCD, when I'm at this boot camp. Because I remember talking to my mother, and she was just like, okay. And I was like, Mom, we got to get there. Okay. But you're putting pressure on, because she not only knows you're in trouble, but she wants some help. But guess what? You see how entangled the situation is? How easy it is? Remember Michael Jackson? No, you got Miguel right over there staying in a 3-bedroom house, and guess else what's happening? No, you got over here a dead little girl for profitable gain. Use that in exchange. It's just you're a big mess. You don't know any better. You're wetback Mexican. I'm here to save you and tell you what. And that's what they did. So now, talking back is just bullshit. Do you see what they did to me? Do you see how they used the satanic, that black kid or that black guy with a diamond earring in his ear, and a Satan-looking girl with black hair on his tattoo on his forearm? Do you see how that works now? So that when I'm about to die and go to anesthesia, you better worship Jesus like I forced you to. because I'm going to train you by visually what you see and how you feel. And when you get out, now I'm going to train them and do all that other shit. And just like when I woke up, the lady goes like this, oh, yeah, he didn't see it. Yeah, I didn't see Jesus, and that was why. So now I'm forced to worship. I told you how that works right there too, huh? That's how what's why it's also so important to have family when you're going to hospitals as well. Because remember, the staff members at hospitals are only workers there. They're workers. They work. They're at work. They're not your family. They're at work. They have a job description. They don't care like an immediate family will for your well-being. That's why they'd rather have your family decide for you if you can't think for yourself than a doctor have to decide what decision is going to be for your well-being in life. I'm very haunted by this because they're taunting me inside the church chapel with my dead body sister with a military, and they had the coffin right there because they intentionally brought the little cart. It was a little, you know, the little gray carts they take in jail. You ever seen the little 2-shelf cart? Everyone knows what they are. They give you little soup when you go to jail and shit. That's what it was. It was a little gray cart like that, and she brings it right over there, and she looks at me and she goes like this, and then goes off with paperwork over there because it's symbolizing my dad. Taking my dad's dead body because so much of the fight was over my dad's money and all this other shit. Because it's just free money, whatever you want to take. Because you have to correct the situation because you don't know who wants to steal the money, and I'm his son and my mom's fucking him. Oh, but he's gay. It's just a fucking nightmare. You know, it's a ghost story. It's a haunting ghost. It's not a pleasant one. Like, I watch ghost stories on TV and shit, and you love watching them and hear about them, you know, and hear the stories of other people, whatever TV shows they have. But I don't like them for myself. You know, I don't. This is a haunting picture to use as a threat now. Now just apply that. Do you see how that church right over there now works against me? Okay, now, remember it's white. No, it's black. No, it's Mexican. Because everybody's doing it. But who has a higher anarchy of everything that's going on? Whites do. Blacks own the music, and they own the majority of the entertainment as well, amongst the blacks. But the blacks are they're dominant. They know how to cut through the racism. They know how to cut through because, you know, there's the whole racism. You know, you have a kid with a white woman. You know, the kid's black, not white or mixed. You know, he's black. He's black. Period. So I thought I would say something about this. It's very disturbing. It's just a haunting. This is for Michaela as well. Just kind of get you an idea of the state of mind situation. You know, I don't know. Women are very touchy, especially when it's a sister, knowing you had a sister that died. I mean, that was your sister. That was your blooded sister. Your dad, who visited you and took care of you, that was your sister that died. Being slapped around and beaten, you know, in front of me. And it's a fucking haunting story. It haunts me in the way that it's just like a curse. Like it curses me. That's what it did. And then I have to apply my own religious beliefs on that because that's how people take advantage of it. In the afterlife, in the imaginary afterlife that people create, especially in the U.S. and in the environment that I grew in, we watched a lot of mediums, we watched ghost stories, spiritual afterlife, things moving. We don't live in India where things are completely different. We don't live in China where things are completely different. Buddhism or these weird religions where people like roll on the floor for fucking 1,400 miles because they go in a seance if they did it for God or some shit. You know, or in the Amazon, any of that. So they know the circumference of the religious belief. But understanding that, you know, that it's a fucking haunting story, like a fucking. They use that because we understand and we think that they can have a higher, it's like a sense of a higher step above Jesus, a higher step above whatever God you think of. I have something else more special of my sister that is in the afterlife that can make me feel content while I'm alive. But they're going to take that away, and they practice that. And the more they file that away, the more it disappears. The more it becomes instated into that belief for your table. So the President of the United States is directly 100% involved. He ordered it. He knows how to shoot the gun. He's just excuses. Oh, this one died over here too. I just fixed it. I just did all that. Oh, it's just I care. Let me give you more brain understanding. Oh, your mom doesn't remember shit. Oh, let me tell you how I do the fuckings here. Oh, you're gonna get a Kenneth story. Oh, now it's so fucked up because I just watched a video too of Kenneth, DJ Keno. And he's doing these, I saw a few interviews, and he's looking at the camera and he goes, oh yeah. And he's looking like he's looking at Miguel, and he's already projecting and training saying, oh, he's a good guy, he's against him too. He was manipulating, and he knew about it. Now he's turning to fucking tables. Do you see now what's happening? Yesterday I went over to Popeyes, and I get potatoes, and I get some mashed potatoes and french fries and a water. And the black guy, there's two black people, they speak Spanish. And when I go there, the guy says, he goes, oh wait, hold, he goes, oh hey, he goes, oh wait, hold on, I forgot. And he's projecting this to me. Oh no, it's because you forgot, huh? Now you want to go and take that money from a little girl and we're Jesus Christ here? Or no, no, it was Ken Cooper, remember, for the blacks and for the whites, and that's the police department right there. But that's not the case. Do you see how I get trained for that? And then he looks at me when before I give him payment for my food, and he goes, "Yeah, hold on, I'm gonna go make a fresh for you right over there." I give him my money, gives me the food. 10 minutes later, I sit down, gives me my food. I said, "What sauces do you want? Honey mustard, ranch, ketchup, whatever." And I was, he goes, you got a straw or something? And he sort of kind of plays lost, kind of dumb a little bit, like it looks like it's intentional. He goes, oh no, wait, hold on, I forgot. And he walks over there, like to the drive-through window. He's doing that because it's going on. I forgot because of your dead sister. You already remember when your dead sister died. It's now you're trying to remember to make more money. No, we're the ones that did it correctly for Keno. 97 on how we come through for President Barack Obama. And Michelle Obama for the blacks, all racism, White House, all for the Marines. My mother's completely blindsided to anything, and she's just spewing the trash at me. It's just a haunting story, I'm so haunted by this. So many people were picking at her dead body. My mother's telling me something else different. Even Frankie could probably tell you this. I think my mother did this several times in front of him. Hey, Mom, Guinness, and I want to say Frankie did this. She did this once in the hallway with me. Ask Frankie. I know she did this at least once with Frankie there. And I asked her. I said, "Hey, Mom, Frankie, ¿tú tienes una hija para allá?" And my mother just goes, "No, sí, hombre, yeah." But she's not doing this because she wants to care for the child. I know my mother and how my mother is. It's because I think that she thinks that it's best to keep us safe. Because Ivan did do a good job. Ivan was a good kid. Like nobody's perfect. I caught him with a few slip-ups, but he was a good kid. He had structure. He had good structure. He had good routines. I mean, he did. And my mother even growing up to me, you should be like him. You see how Ivan is? He has a job and working. He's going to go to college and all this other shit. So he was sort of like, my mother was like sort of the role model of him, of what a good kid is supposed to be. Doesn't wear baggy pants, doesn't wear Jinkos, always wears a nice dress shirt, nice clean shoes, and a pair of shoes. Always clean, but formal. None of this hip hop or fashion. It was very clean cut. It was very like dressing like an adult, like you go work at a normal job. You know, your dress shoes. You know, some slacks and it's a nice dress shirt. You know, didn't always kept his hair always short. That's what it was. Never had hairstyles. So I think it's important for me to talk about, because that's how my mother, I believe, always projected it. Like she's okay, but you don't know about this old man that's over here. You don't know about what Ivan's mother's doing. You see how that continues to even play even more against me? I don't know if this information is too jibber-jabbering in so many different directions. It makes any sense, but I'm trying for my mother. It's just a fucking haunting story. It's like just throwing a dead body at me and you're scolding me for it. You know, and they believe that I understand. They think I do, and it's not the case. That little girl was just used in front of my mother to say, look what you did. Look what you created. You know, I remember my mother putting her head down when she would come home from work and she would see that little girl walking. She would never greet the girl. And she would just, and it wasn't like sad, like she was like, ugh, I don't want that. She would just keep like walk, like she'd be walking and I'd see her, you know, with her purse, and she would just look like this and go, and just like, kind of like that. So when my mother ends up, when my mother ends up, approaching the girl a few times, there's a sense of fear because of this woman. And there's also because she can't do anything about it. And she does have to have somebody else take care of the kid. But, boy, all that baggage fell when she was at my front door. And I opened the door and there she was starting to walk through, and then walks through. And apparently she buried the little girl. I don't know what they could have said or done to her. My mother would get mad because they were making a bunch of money. They were giving money and a paycheck for that little girl. And now it's just a demon story. That's all she is. But it was Jesus Christ that did it. There's no possibility in enlightenment. Once you install that, especially with anesthesia, that's how they get it for the blacks, for keynote. Oh, it's because, the favor. Oh, that's how you get it from President Barack Obama. That's who you fucking did it for. And Michelle Obama. Because remember, the first black president, you got to be as ruthless as you can, because it's the only chance you're probably going to get for a long time, and it's the first one in the United States. You see how that works? Oh, it's just not about racism. No, it is over there. So it's a political game. They're just guttering because they know Michael Jackson and 9/11 shit happened. They just took all my money. They not only just did that, then they used my dead sister as a wagon for their luggage shit. That's what they did. I saw them and they had a great cart with paperwork. And I remember when I saw the paperwork, I thought of my dad's paperwork. And I remember looking at them, and I was like, and I kind of slightly thought I remember, I was like, they probably made me my dad's money. Like, I don't know. And it made me think to myself, I have to be more strict about getting my dad's money, not for myself. You got to understand, every time I'm thinking of my dad's house and money, I'm thinking, I'm putting this on the table for my immediate family. This is for Frankie and Julian. This is not because no one else can fight for it. Only Frankie's now gone. I can prove what I have to say. When my father died, we went to my dad's sister's house. And when we went there, an aunt, who I didn't know was a transgender as well, was fucking crazy as well. We went there, and I said, the little money that I got from my dad's funeral, I said, I had like $5,000. I think it was like I got 6,000. I got 6,500 or 6,200 for my dad's ING stock market money, and then there was another 7 or 8,000 I got. I think it was like seven or it was like just under 8,000 that I got. It was like 7,500 that I got for the house. And I told I told Michael, Robert, who were children of my father's first marriage, who I thought were half brothers, were only stepbrothers. Technically, they're stepbrothers, but I didn't grow up with them. You know, Robert was the only one that kept a very minimal contact. And I said there in front of Frankie and Julian, I said, would y'all like to take the money I have? Because it's only right, because this money belongs to you. He wanted to give this to all his children. And I'm homeless. I have no car and no job. No, I was working at Standard Register. And I'm homeless. Did I have a car? Yeah, I didn't have a car then. I didn't have a car when my dad died. And that's the story. I'm willing to give you the pennies that I have because of all the work I did, just because I wanted to say, well, it's honoring his wishes to give to his children. And you were there, part of his life. It's only right. Would y'all like to ask Michael and Robert for me to give you this money? I'm fucking broke and poor. You got to understand how. And I remember clenching to myself, thinking to myself, like, and they probably saw it in my eyes as well, like I was hoping for them not to say, but it was the right thing for me to do. And this is probably all, you can ask all of them. Julian and Frankie were there. I'm giving you money that I work for. You were nowhere in the picture, but it's only the right thing because you were his son. You were part of the family branch of his kids. And that goes to show to prove that when I saw this cart and this money and my dad's sister symbolized, and they're all kind of going, and all these people, Mr. Barry that was over at Newman Smith High School attacking me over my dad's money. It was several other teachers, but you don't know about those stories. But they know all about the money in the house. Do you see what happens? Them motherfuckers are dead now. Do you see what they did? Oh yeah, I was the enemy, wasn't I? Oh, I was just trying to take his fucking money, wasn't I? Oh, Frankie gets raped by 10 homosexual men, and then my dad dies, and he says, no, just take the money. Do you see what happens now? Now for President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama for keynote, and I say, I got a better life. I don't care. Take your scum shit out of here. Who the fuck wants to go to Hollywood anyway and do any of that garbage shit? It's content right here. I got American flag. Got killed off the enemies. I got the homosexual movement. I got the transgender movement. Yeah, exactly. It's exactly how that works. And then where's my mother in this picture? You know, like, this is a fucking nightmare of a story. My mother attacking my dead sister, and they're doing this, and so they leave. And Robert Carrera, he does this when he's walking in front of me. He goes like this, and he keeps his head down, right? Because you need to project a body language that indicates to the opponent or to the individual in front of you to trigger something of either a gut feeling and a judgment that you can take whether this person is going to be good or not. 16 years old, they didn't give a shit. Remember 9/11 happened? Now they're going to use 9/11 on this little girl. That's what they did. You can figure out exactly when that happened because there's cameras inside that church. But he walks by me and he goes, yeah, I think I'll take that. And he's not looking over at me. He's talking to Michelle way in the corner of the church at the entrance that goes to the other locker room. And then he goes by me, and he goes by me, and I'm like with that camera. I'm saying I'm like right there. He's walking. He walks a good 30 feet to where that, and he goes like this. Sorry, Hector. Or he did squat, and then he walks like this, and he walks by, and he goes, yeah, sorry about that. And so they know about Miguel, they know about the dead little girl. Now what? So I think it's important for me to talk about the circumstances of this, because do you see how they use 9/11 now? And now I'm trying to use that for 9/11. You talked to my dad before 9/11 happened, and now the little girl for an exchange of emotions, spiritual understanding. Now you isolate me with that. Now curse me with the devil like you did over with anesthesia, though, huh? Do you see now why? There was no reason to really do that. And they're doing this on purpose. Oh, it's just another accident. Just another accident. I'm 41 years old. All the money and everything, they don't care. They just take whatever the fuck they want. My mother can't think. It's a fucking nightmare. It's just little girls are demon stories, what they made this into. And they're just ripping the shit out of this, my sister in front of me. Just ripping the shit out of her organs and take whatever the fuck they want. It's just, she's, Hector's a bad person. No fucking idea. They're just manipulating my mother the entire time. And it's too late now. It's too late. Everything worked out the way they wanted. They got the best of exchanges.